Let me go ahead and kick things off here. Welcome everybody that's on the call that was able to join. Good to see that we have a good amount of people joining us today. And so let me go ahead and share this. Okay. All right, guys. Again, thanks so much for joining. We wanted to put together, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of crazy complexities when it comes to the solar market in Arizona. It's really one of the most complex in the country. We've dealt with a lot of different ones, and this one here is definitely very complex. And we see a lot of people maybe not understanding it fully. Maybe they're brand new to the market, and so we really wanted to do this a little bit. We have this kind of for our internal team at Sun Solar Solutions, but we're gonna record this and have this available for our internal team in our training. But then also I'll have links for this, so if you guys do want to see this later, there will be links available, and you can definitely share with your teams. Obviously we're a sales organization here in Arizona. We service several different markets. Obviously, we kind of have some of our own things as every company does internally. But this is something that, it's definitely, you guys can definitely share with your teams, things like that. I think it's definitely going to be something that can help improve the industry overall and just make people more successful on what they're doing, but also kind of help, protect the industry, help protect the homeowners. So a little bit about before I kind of jump into some of that stuff. So I'm Val Baraket. I'm one of the co-founders at Sun Solar Solutions and the CEO. My partners are Troy Dumbakowitz and Michael O'Donnell. Some of you guys might know those guys. They've been around in the industry for quite a while, and they put up some really big numbers. So Sun Solar Solutions has been in business for around 5 years. We have right around 6,000 homeowners, done about 52 megawatts in the over the last 5 years. So we've helped a lot of homeowners go solar, and we have a really, really good understanding of how everything works, right? Again, it's very complex, and we'll go over that a little bit more in depth, but let's talk a little bit about the topics that we're going to go over. And so today, what I want to cover is the problem, kind of talk about why we're putting this together, understanding production and consumption and the difference between those. Talk about APS, right? So that's what we're going to focus on today, is those, finish off with the APS. And then tomorrow, we're going to talk about SRP. We're going to talk about Nevada Energy, and we're going to do a Q&A at the end. I'll try to squeeze in a Q&A today as well, if we can, and at the end, just depending. I'd like this to an hour, and a lot of this stuff, when we start going over it, it takes quite a bit of time. So I'll try to squeeze everything in, but if I can do a Q&A at the end of the day, we'll do that as well. Let's first talk about, what is the problem, okay? And essentially, why are we talking about this? And so there's a few different things that kind of contribute to that. One of the top reasons is utilities are increasingly making it more complex to go solar. In places like Arizona, it's completely, and there might be other places in the country as well that this is happening to, where they're really changing the way that solar interacts with the utility and the way that the utility treats the solar power that you're using and that you're feeding back to the grid. Okay, Arizona, we really don't have net metering. There's some forms of net metering. SRP has some net metering, but it doesn't roll over, right? So it's sort of a net metering. APS, Tucson Electric Power, ED3, they have a sort of a way of doing it. SVVC, whatever they're, SVVC, they've done away with it. Unisource, all these different companies have done away with it. Even in other markets, where maybe this hasn't happened, you're looking at California, and they still have net metering, but even for them, it's not really the same net metering as it was. Right now, they've got these buckets. You've got on peak, off peak. The amount that they pay you back for the energy actually is split up between the on peak and the off peak, so that even in California, it really affects it. And I think we're going to see this more and more across the country, right? So one of the things, actually, if you're still in a net metering market, I suggest go out there and kill it, right? It's one of these things that it's almost like you don't know what you have until it's gone. And for us in Arizona, there's still a lot of sales happening out here. The industry is still doing great, but a lot of people that didn't go solar prior to end of summer 2017 are really missing out. And we'll go over why they're missing out, how things have changed. Basically people now have to spend a lot more money than they did 3 years ago to get the same result. And I think as time goes on, we're going to see this kind of happening, nationwide. So it's something to definitely kind of keep in mind. And again, if you are in a net metering market, take advantage of that, because it's not always going to be that way. And we've seen that happen here. Okay. So that's one of the things, right? It's utilities are making increasingly more complex to go solar. The second point on here is solar without net metering is a whole different ballgame. Okay. With net metering, and again, we'll go more into details on this, but with net metering, you're really used to, you do a system, if somebody uses 15,000 kilowatt hours, you make a system that produces 15,000 kilowatt hours, one cancels out the other, and it's just super straightforward. It's easy for homeowners to understand. It's easy for reps to understand. Everybody kind of wins in that scenario, right? But when you don't have net metering anymore, it gets a lot more complex. And a lot of times it's hard for people to even really wrap their mind around the concept of it. Like, what do you mean 100% isn't 100%? Like, how can I not be, right? And so that's definitely, one of the things that we want to cover, and that's part of the problem. And then the third thing on here is, obviously this misinformation, maybe not having the information, or it's the undereducation of it, just not actually knowing how things work. It's going to be bad for the homeowners. It's going to be bad for customers. It's going to be bad for, whatever company you work with. And it's going to be bad for the industry overall, right? A lot of the people that are going solar now, solar is still such a small part of this, part of the electricity mix, especially when it comes to a residential solar, that a lot of people that are doing it today, they're still really early adopters, right? They're kind of the first ones to do it. And so if they have a bad experience, that's gonna have huge effects later on, right? Because they're sort of building that foundation. If they feel that, they didn't understand it correctly, it wasn't explained correctly, we're gonna feel those shockwaves later on. So those are kind of some of the problems, okay? The reason that we're sort of bringing this up again is to, we want to get this information out there. We want to educate people in the industry to make sure they have a good understanding of it, right? And we see this happening a lot. We see it happening multiple times a week, honestly, right? We've had customers where we pitched them a solar quote and we're telling them one thing, and then we literally had a customer that they had 5 quotes from other companies and they were all telling them something different than what we were telling them, right? So now the homeowner is super confused. They don't know what's going on. They either don't end up going solar at all because they don't know who to trust, or sometimes they go with the other company because they want to believe, in a sense, and I don't want to call it lie, right? But maybe the misinformation, they want to believe that because honestly it sounds better, right? I wish that was the case of how some people understand the process to work. And then some people we do when they go with us because we show them why the things work the way that they are, right? So then they're like, hey, these guys know what they're talking about. Even though somebody else might be telling me something else, like this makes sense. And so it can go both ways. But I think if everybody understood how it works, again, I think homeowners would be happier. I think everybody would have a better experience on the sales side. You don't have people that are upset with you or whatever that might be. They're going to be giving you more referrals, things like that, right? Let me go ahead and jump into the production versus consumption, okay? So production versus consumption, right? This is something that people may not understand. Again, if you're used to net metering, you're used to, if you build a system that's 100%, right? And let's say the homeowner is using 15,000 kilowatt hours, you're producing 15,000 kilowatt hours. That sort of makes sense, right? Like you got 15,000 minus 15,000 is 0. You're not buying any power from the utility in a sense. And, you've got your, grid charges and fees, which are a lot of people pitch it. They're saying, hey, we got you 100% covered. You are going, all you're gonna have to pay some taxes and fees, right? Well, there's really no such thing as 100% energy provided by solar, okay? Unless you have batteries, right? A lot of these quotes that are actually out there, and we'll go a little bit into, I'll show you guys, I'll really dive in, and it's gonna get pretty technical. I'll show you guys how we came up with this information and also what kind of backup we have to verify information. There's a lot of leading companies out there, proposals, companies and stuff like that. I'm not going to call anybody out in particular, But you know, they're not understanding on their end exactly how this stuff works. And I'll actually show you guys an example. One of the ones that I will mention is Energy Tool Base, which is actually one of the bigger ones in the sense of like they're very technical. They don't really deal actually with proposals as much. They really deal on the energy usage side of it. And we've actually worked with their software engineers on their end to go through the process and understand, you know, why are we getting one number and why are they getting a different number? And we're able to figure that out. So we will go over that in this presentation later. But again, there's no such thing as 100% energy provided by solar, which is, you know, in quotes. You'll see that on a lot of quotes out there. A lot of quoting tools will say 100% power provided by solar, or 98% provided, or 100, whatever that number is, right? And there's no such thing without batteries, okay? Even in net metering markets. And there's a reason for that, right? The reason that is you gotta, and let me pull up this slide here, right? You have to understand that you know, a homeowner uses power 24 hours a day, right? Your solar system does not produce power 24 hours a day, right? It basically produces power for approximately, you know, let's say on average 12 hours a day throughout the year. And so, as you can see here represented in this graph, you've got in the blue, you've got the home usage, right? So usually, obviously during at night when people are sleeping, it's gonna be very low. When they wake up in the morning, start getting ready for work, right? That's gonna increase a little bit. Then, you know, again, depending on the market, this is more for the, you know, the desert Southwest. So this is what a typical usage profile for somebody looks like, right? They go to work, maybe they turn the AC up a little bit. And so, you know, it doesn't use as much power, but it's obviously still using power. And then they, you know, they come home from work, they do dinner, they do dishes, they do laundry, whatever they might be doing, and that's going to spike up, right? So your usage is 24 hours a day, but your solar production is only about half of the day, right? It's only about 12 hours, and even then, it's not an even, right? This doesn't shoot up straight from 7, right? It kind of curves during the day. And so what ends up happening is approximately, and this is going to depend, I'll show you guys some examples. This is going to depend on somebody's usage profile. You know, are they kind of a regular family of, you know, mom and dad, and they've got the, you know, a couple of kids? Is it retired people? Maybe is it a single person? There's different load profiles. But what we found is typically it's going to fall into about that 30 to 40% range that you're actually using your solar power directly, okay? The rest of the power, and obviously that's, you know, when the sun's out, you know, it's making solar energy, it's going to make a lot more than you typically use during the day. And you're going to end up exporting about 60 to 65% of that power to the grid, okay? And so when you have a net metering situation, a lot of you guys are used to net metering. When you've got a net metering situation, I'm going to get my slideshow to go back. All right. When you have a net metering situation, you're very used to the power that you produce in the springtime, for example, right? And the utility company is giving you kilowatt hour credits, right? You're using kilowatt hours, and then their system produces, you know, kilowatt hours, obviously, and then whatever you don't use goes back to the grid. In a net metering situation, you're building up all these credits. So this line here is going to be your solar production. This is the homeowner's usage, right? And so this gap here in this area, you're building up these credits. And when you have net metering, whatever was extra here rolls over to this month. You get this one, it rolls over to this one, right? It just keeps doing that until you get to the summer. And now you've got all of these energy credits that get applied to this, right? And then by the end of the year, you basically have net zero usage, and you're literally all just paying taxes and fees, right? But in a market such as Arizona, and even Nevada a little bit, and some people are kind of surprised that Nevada, you know, they think, what do you mean Nevada is 100% net metering? We'll go over that tomorrow on why it's not really 100% net metering. But in a market like Arizona, whether it's Tucson Electric Power or APS, they don't have net metering, right? And so what happens with this extra power here is it ends up going back to the grid, just like in net metering, and then they're actually paying you money for it, okay? And the problem is, you know, we go back to the problem is the amount that they pay you is less than the amount that they charge you, okay? So you're gonna end up having a gap there. And it's actually about a 60, they give you about 63% of what they charge you for the solar power. So you end up with a gap. And so a lot of times people out in the market, and we hear a lot, you know, we run into homeowners and like, well, hey, what do you mean that you know, that other company or whoever might have, you know, told me something different because maybe they misunderstood it, right? And so what ends up happening is you're not just paying those taxes and fees, right? You're actually paying throughout the whole day, APS and TEP, they're charging you for that power directly. It's just like as if you didn't have solar, right? Anything that you bring in from the grid, and if we look at this again, anything you bring in from the grid, they're going to charge you for. And for example, with something like APS, their on-peak time is from 3 to 8, right? So you're looking at over here, right, 1,500 hours to 2,000 to 20. You know, you've got this whole area here, right, which is all on-peak, where they're charging you about 25, 26 cents a kilowatt hour. They're literally charging you for that power, okay? Now, the energy that you exported during the day, they are going to give you a credit, and what you're going to end up doing is you're going to apply that credit to this power that you end up buying, not only on peak, but also off peak, right? But what if you do 100% off system, because you're essentially getting about a 63%, 65% net metering value, you're going to have this gap there that the homeowner is going to be stuck with that bill. And that's one of the things that we've seen a lot of people don't really, you know, they don't understand, or they haven't been, you know, informed on. And that's when it doesn't make sense, when it's, you know, why, if my system is 100%, why do I still have a large bill, right? And so going through that education, explain to them, you know, kind of makes the, you know, light bulb goes off and it's like, okay, I understand, right? Now there are solutions to, you know, if you do want that bill lower, there's definitely solutions, and we do run into that. You know, we have, we've got a process in place, and I'll kind of share some of this with you guys on different percentages of you know, quote unquote offset, right? On what those results are. But, you know, we ran into, kind of go into another example, we ran into an example, I want to say last week, where, you know, we pitched a homeowner, and, you know, we told them, hey, here's your system size. I think it was a 12 kilowatt, which was, you know, quote unquote, again, 100% offset, which, again, there's no such thing, but people are still kind of used to using that term. And we showed them a $48 average remaining APS bill, which is accurate. That's what it was. We had a competitor come in, and they told them it was going to be a $2 remaining APS bill, right? And so obviously that's vastly different. It was the exact same system size, exact same design, same azimuth, right? You had the same production, but they were showing them a $2 bill. We were showing them a $48 bill in our proposal. And they ended up, we actually lost our customer, right? They went with the other customer, and they actually told our rep, like, look, hey, it's the same system size. You guys are competitive in price, but, you know, if I go with them, I'm going to have a $2 bill. And, you know, it just blows my mind when that happens, because we don't have, neither does the other company, we don't have any control of the remaining bill aside from what the system size is, right? So depending on how you design the system in efficiency and in, you know, azimuth, tilt, all those kind of things, that's what's going to determine the remaining bill. But if we've literally got the same exact system facing the same direction, all that, they're going to have the same remaining bill. Like, we don't have the power, neither does the other company, to offer them a $2 bill. But the homeowner, they want to believe that. Why wouldn't they? It's like, hey, you know, they're telling me $2. I'm going to go ahead and go with them. And unfortunately, they're going to end up having a bad experience. So let's talk a little bit about, so that's production versus consumption. Like I said, we've done our own internal studies on this, right? Of people's usage habits. Again, we've got a large database. We have nearly 6,000 customers that went solar with us. You know, we got a ton more that didn't pull the trigger, but you know, we had their usage information. And so we've got on our end, we actually have a great team of engineers on staff. You know, they actually work on all the proposals for all the reps. But the great thing about it, they're actually engineers, right? They're fourth year, you know, ASU seniors. And so they've put in, you know, they put a lot of time, a lot of resources in figuring this out, and really getting an idea by looking all the hours of somebody's usage on an hourly basis, right? And I mean, you're talking about 24 times 365. I mean, you're talking about 8,760 data points per homeowner to really figure out what their usage patterns are. And that's kind of how we came up with that 35 to 40% usage directly from solar, and then the about 60% that you're exporting out. Now, this data, one of the things I want to share with you guys is if I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the SolarEdge Designer. So SolarEdge actually has a pretty cool tool, and I'll share this with you guys. Maybe you guys don't have this sort of in your toolbox, but it's a very cool program. It's called SolarEdge Designer. It's free, and it's a design tool from SolarEdge, and it has a lot of the stuff where you can actually put in the offset. It's not going to tell you the remaining bill, but it's going to tell you exactly what the system's producing, what it exports out, and what you're actually using. You know, how much the system is clipping. So let me go ahead and actually share that with you guys so you can see that. All right, so this is, if you guys haven't used this, it's pretty cool. I do recommend, looking into it. So this is SolarEdge Designer, and, it's pretty basic. I put a lot of the stuff in already, because when I was prepping for this, but I basically got about a 10 kilowatt system. So I've got the customer's consumption down here at 18,500 kilowatt hours, and it's about a 10 kilowatt system. So it's, again, quote unquote, a 10 kilowatt or 100% offset system, okay? So, again, if you haven't used this, you can do site modeling in it. You can do your panel placement. You can do your, it even does your electrical and your streaming and stuff like that. So it's a pretty cool tool. But one of the things that it does for us is it really helps back up the data that we were able to come up with and kind of show that import versus export. It does have, actually, go back to the project info. Here's where you can actually choose the consumption profile we're talking about. So, here's retirees working from home. This is what their consumption is going to look like. Here's a family with school-age children, right? Here's a family with infants, single person, and then a nighttime focused consumption. So it's got all these different tools, and then it's going to actually take it and it's going to put it into their model and show you what kind of import-export you're getting. But typically, we're using the family with school-age children. That one's about that 60-40. You'll notice when you do run this, if you do, for example, retirees, even though it looks a lot different, you're still exporting about 55% of your power, and you're using about 45% of it directly. I'm sorry, 35, 65. If you're a family with kids, it's about that 60-40. So it's not a big shift. A lot of times people think like, oh, well, this homeowner, they've got, their usage is different, so it's going to be way different. Yeah, I know that, normally it's $50 remaining bill with APS, but this guy's definitely different. He doesn't use a lot, so he's only going to be $10. We've done a lot of research on that, and that's just not the case. It is going to impact it, and you guys will sort of see that range, but it's not as big as somebody might hope that it is, right? So I'll go ahead and choose the family with school-age children, and then I'll go back to summary and reports. And so here's the system, right? We've got a 9.6 kilowatt. It is using a 7600 inverter, which is 126% DC to AC oversizing. And then here's our annual use electricity production. So it's 18,590 kilowatt hours. And then here's the system production. This is showing how much you're self-consuming from the solar system. And then this is showing how much you're exporting. So again, you're self-consuming about 40%, right? 41% of the energy usage. And then you're actually exporting out 59%. And on this other side of it, obviously, you've got self-consumption. You're drawing, obviously, if you are exporting 59% from the utility, that means that you're importing 59% of the utility, right? Because it has to add up to 100% in this scenario, right? Those numbers can. So if you're only getting 41% of your power from the solar system, you have to get your other 59% from somewhere else. And so you're going to be getting that from the utility company. So up here with SolarEdge, you can actually, again, it's a very cool tool. I do recommend if you guys haven't used it. You've got it actually even shows your amount of clipping per month on an annual basis, or you can say on a monthly basis. And then it actually shows how much power are you exporting and how much power are you using directly. And the interesting thing is, like, a lot of times in the summer, you might think that, well, it's different in the summer, right? Because we're using a lot of power, you're using that AC. And so you're probably using a lot more solar power. But the thing is, you're also producing a lot more power in the summer. And so you're still, that ratio actually goes down in that scenario versus, in the winter, it's actually, you see it's a little bit more heavily weighed on you're actually using more of it, you're exporting less. And then you're using more of it in the summer, especially in April and May. We're in Arizona, those are the best solar months in Arizona, April and May. It's relatively cool, right? It's 80 degrees, high 80s. But you've got a lot of sun, you've got a lot of, there's not a lot of rain and stuff like that, good sun angle. And so you've got a lot of, you've got a lot of sun hours. So you're going to be producing a lot of power that you're exporting back to the grid. And so that's kind of what that looks like on that. And again, that's SolarEdge's data. And if you guys do want to kind of play around with that, take a look at it, because it's definitely a good tool. Okay. So we're back here. So that's a little bit about how consumption versus production works, right? So it's important to have a good understanding of that, because without that understanding, it's going to be difficult to sort of comprehend and put together the pieces of how APS interacts with all of this. So I'd like to go ahead and get into that next. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about APS and solar. All right, so here's APS's program, basically in a nutshell, right? You've got there's no net metering, so it's essentially net billing, right? So power that's produced by your solar system is going to be directly used by the home during the day. Okay, any excess power is going to go back to the grid, and they're going to purchase it at a current rate of 10.449 cents, and that's guaranteed for 10 years. Right? A lot of people say, what happens after 10 years? Well, I guess they're going to relook at it at that point and make a decision on, is it less, is it more, is it the same, right? That's a little bit of unknown, but logic will tell you that electricity is going to cost more, and so that rate should actually have more value in the future than it has now, right? But basically, excess power goes back to the grid, and as we just saw, about 60% of your power is going to go back to APS, and they're going to pay you this much for it. There's also a grid fee, and again, we hear this a lot in the market where people are saying, all you have to do is pay your grid fee and fees, right? Or taxes, and there's a grid fee, there's a connection fee. There is actually a thing as a connection fee, but it's only 93 cents times 93 cents, and then of course they do tax that on top of it. But it's essentially about $1 a kilowatt. So your 10 kilowatt system is going to have a $10 connection or grid fee. That's a real thing. And then power. Now here's this is the fourth point on here is an important one that, again, a lot of times people don't understand the concept of it. The remaining power that you're buying from APS, you're going to pay approximately 16.5 cents a kilowatt hour blended. And that, again, sometimes confuses people because they're saying, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? If I go to this graph, if I go back to this, they're saying that doesn't make a lot of sense because most of my power during the day, even this on-peak period, is being covered by solar. I am buying some of it on peak, but it's about half and half. And so they feel that that number is high. They feel that this 16.5 cents is high. And here's the reason why it's not high, right? And we've actually seen this. We've got a ton of customers that we've actually been able to look at their data post-solar, and I'll show you guys that. And this is about that average number. And the reason for that is you have to understand that on an APS bill, about half of the charges are based on kilowatt hours usage from the grid. The other charges are actually just based on billing days. And so there's things on there like a customer service charge. There's X amount of cents per day, right? There's the environmental surcharge. There's all these things on there, and that doesn't matter how much kilowatt hours you use. You literally could shut off your main breaker, and you would still get a bill from APS for $30 or whatever that number is. And so the less power you actually buy from APS, the higher the blended kilowatt hour rate is. And to sort of understand that, think about it this way. Let's say you had a solar system, and let's say all you bought from the utility company was 1 kilowatt hour for the entire month. Obviously, that's not realistic, but it helps prove the point. Let's say all you bought was 1 kilowatt hour, and let's say your bill from APS was $30. Okay, so what's your kilowatt hour rate? Your kilowatt hour rate is $30 per kilowatt hour, right? Now let's say you bought 30 kilowatt hours, right, in that month, and they charge you $30. Now you're paying $1 a kilowatt hour, right? And so a lot of these rates are going to stay fixed. They're not going to change no matter how much or how little power you use from the utility. And so that's why this number ends up making sense. And I'll show you guys examples of APS bills where we can actually see, here's how much APS charged them divided by how much power they actually provide, and you guys will see what that number looks like. Okay, and so that's those 4 points is basically how it works with APS. And what does that mean for the homeowner? So with the one-to-one system, and on our end, we really don't use, we sort of use a percentage of offset just in our own internal, just so people understand it better. But on our proposal, and we do our own custom proposals in-house, really just because we really haven't found one that's accurate enough in the marketplace for Arizona. So on our proposal, we don't even show offset. Like we show production, we show production, usage, and that's it. We don't show any kind of percentage on there because it honestly confuses the homeowner, right? If you're meeting with the homeowner and they are, you're putting this proposal in front of them and they see a number of 100%, like logically, they're just going to think like, okay, well, that makes sense. My solar system's producing 100% of my power. Like, why would I have a remaining bill? Like nobody would logically think that. And so now when you start explaining why they don't have one, now that's actually more confusing. And so we don't actually, on our proposals, we don't list the percentage of offset because all it does is confuse people, okay? And so, with a 1-to-1 system, which would be, 100%, right? If the production is equal to the, if the production is equal to the usage, your customer can expect to have a negative bill about 4 to 5 months out of the year, and then a positive bill about 7 to 8 months out of the year. And depending on their amount of usage and on the system size, they're going to still end up paying APS about $700 to $800 a year, which averages about to, I guess my average there doesn't, right? So it's about $50 to $85. I didn't update my other, it's obviously going to be $600 to about $1,020 a year for the entire year. And then you've got, that's with a 100% system. And so the way we normally explain it to homeowners, we talk to them about an average, right? So we say, hey, look, you're still gonna, you go solar and you're gonna pay EPS average of $55, $65, $35, whatever the proposal shows. And that's gonna be an average amount. And the important thing to let a homeowner know that it's average is they're gonna get bills in the summer, at 100%, quote unquote 100%, or even at 120%, they're gonna get a bill in the summer of $150, $200. Like in late summer, August, September, that's the reality. And so when they call screaming your head off, right, that hey, you didn't tell me this, or you lied to me, or whatever that situation is, you're going to want to remind them that, hey, remember we talked about that it's an average, it's $50 average, right? And so I always kind of joke about it. It hasn't happened yet because we don't run into a lot of this with customers, but I want to take a phone call from somebody that sort of complains about that, and then ask them, when their bill was negative 200 in April, how come they didn't call then and say, hey, you told me $50, right? But that kind of, it helps kind of show that point. So that's kind of what they're going to be looking at for average. And then at the end of the calendar year with APS, anything in excess of $25, you actually get a check back from APS, in a form of that paper check. I got one last year. I actually have I have a 30 kilowatt system on my home, and it was oversized, obviously, and I got it back from APS of, I think it was around $1,350 in January. So you actually have a little, power producing system on your roof. We're actually planning on using up some more of that power, so it's not always going to be like that. It was oversized because of, we're going to be doing a pool and stuff. So that's going to go down. But until that point, it really shows that you actually do get an actual paper check back from APS. All right, let me see what I have next. So let's go over some APS sample bills, right? This is a actual customer bill. They went solar. This is on the current plan. The current plan started. So another quick thing, APS redoes their, they redo their, the buyback rate at the end of every summer. There's always a deadline, and it can be reduced by 10%. If you get in on the current one, obviously your grandfather in for the 10 years. But over the last 3 years, it's gone down every year, right? So, that's the unfortunate thing. But this is a current customer. And so I'm going to go over that with you guys here in a second. Give me a sec. Okay. So let's go over an actual customer bill here, right? As we talked about earlier, you've got actual, right, there's a customer service charge, like $2.26. That is 100% based on how many billing days there are in the month. And so again, if you use zero power, if you literally go outside, shut off your main breaker, you're going to get a bill of at least $2.26, which means your kilowatt hour rate is, outrageous, right? And then you've got your, you've got your service charge, you've got your environmental charges, you've got your metering charge, you've got your meter reading, right? You've got your billing charge, you've got the actual on peak and off peak right here, right? So they're literally charging you for everything they charge a regular homeowner without solar, they're charging a homeowner with solar, right? There's really no difference. The only difference is that A, you're not getting all of your power from them, and B, they're going to apply some credits back to your bill, right? So here's that grid access charge. I believe this was a 7 kilowatt system. So if I pull up a calculator on my end and I take $6.51 and I divide it by 93 cents, I get exactly 7 kilowatts. So that's basically that solar charge or the grid charge. And then what APS does is they take all that, they add it up, then they charge you the taxes and fees. And that's what we run into a lot. Like I said, we have people that say, oh, you're just going to pay some, the grid fee and taxes and fees. Well, that would just be this stuff plus this. That's basically ignoring all of these things, right? And so APS is going to add all this up. They're going to add some taxes and fees, and this is what APS here is actually charging you, $57.52, okay? And on this side, if you look on the right side, you'll see how much you actually pulled from APS. This customer pulled 250 kilowatt hours from APS, right? And so if we take $57.52, you divide it by 250, you have 23 cents, right? So this homeowner has solar and they're paying EPS 23 cents a kilowatt hour for the remaining power from the grid, right? So again, a lot of times people think, oh, you're still going to draw some power from EPS. It's all off peak. And so you're only going to pay 10 cents. And it'd be great if that was the case, but it's actually in this particular situation, it's actually 23 cents, okay? Now, if you look further down, now you have total electricity sold to APS. So this homeowner actually exported out 963 kilowatts. And if you take 963 times 0.10449, you get $100.62, 6.238, right? Which rounds up to $100.63, which is exactly what you see here. So they charged on 57, they credit them 100, and this homeowner's bill is actually negative $43. So this is their March bill, and their actual bill is $43.11, negative $43.11, right? So they don't know anything. They don't have to write APS a check at all, right? Let's go at a couple more examples. Here's another example of a different customer, and you've got, here's their bill. So this is their June bill, and their bill is actually negative $172. They came into this month from May, and their May bill was negative 146. On this particular bill, if you look down here, their bill was negative 26. So that negative 26 gets added to 146, and now you've got a negative 172. And so as we talked about earlier, what ends up happening in the spring is you're building up this credit, right? You're just building on top of it, you're building more and more, and you get into the summer, right? Because you're going to need these credits to help offset some of your summer bills. So if we take a look at the next one, here's this exact same customer, right? So this is the same person. This is their June bill. This is their September bill. You'll see that their September bill is actually a positive 195. And why is that? Well, all the credit that they built up all the way up throughout the year, it ended up getting used up. And by the time that they got to September, they ran out of those credits. And now they're literally paying, they're paying APS money. They're still getting credits from the utility, but now they actually have to write APS a check. And so if we look back on this side, again, you have the grid access charge. Down here, you've got all of your things, which their actual APS bill was 262, plus the taxes and fees. So their actual APS bill was 294. And if you take 294.30 divided by 1706, they're paying 17.2 cents a kilowatt hour for the power that they bought from APS. Now, they did sell back power, right? So they sold back 768 kilowatt hours, and that gets applied to this 294, and you're left with $195.23, okay? And so that's what that looks like from a homeowner standpoint, right? They're going to get bills. They're not going to get bills in the summer or in the spring if this is designed properly, but they are going to get bills in the late summer, especially. And those bills, your customers should not be surprised to see a $200 bill, right? Like that is very normal, and they need to understand that, right? Because otherwise, they are not going to be happy if they understood that their bill is maybe $10 year round or $20 year round or whatever number they understood. They're not going to be happy when it gets to this, and again, it's going to affect everything. Right? Okay, so that's a little bit about how the bills work. Looks like we're down to about 13 minutes, and I'm trying to keep this right on time. So I want to show you guys a little bit. We're going to share this now. This is an internal, this is an internal document that we have. It's really kind of intellectual property on our end, but I do want to show you guys a little bit so you can better understand the concept. So I do want to pull this up and show it to you guys. Okay. So you guys see, this is our this is one of our calculators. We've got a bunch of different calculators for utilities, but this is what we use internally to figure out what somebody's remaining bill is when our engineers in the office are putting together a proposal. Okay, and so we put in our system size, we put in the zip code, and the zip code matters because of the tax rates are different. We put in the usage, and then we put in the production, and then it gives us an average remaining bill, and it basically 100% is just it's not offset, but it's the relationship between the production and the usage is a percentage. Okay, and this shows what they're paying to APS throughout the year, right? As an average for the power that they actually buy. So on the back end, there's a lot of stuff that's done in this, and again, our engineers at the office put this together. It's got a lot of it's got a lot of data points to get this all figured out, but essentially it all boils down to here, right? And so let me bring this a little bit into focus. And so this is a customer that's at 100%, okay? And you guys can see what their actual months look like throughout the year. So they start off with January. A lot of times January, especially if it's an electric house, they're going to end up with a very similar production versus offset. So there's not going to be a lot of, there's not going to be a lot of credits in January. So in this particular situation, the customer's January bill is $23.73. Okay. You get into February, and now you are producing more power than you're using. And so that's going back to the grid, and now they have a negative $14 bill, right? You get to March, again, you're overproducing. You got a negative $31 bill, which gets added to the previous $14 negative bill. So now your bill is negative 46, right? Next month, you're adding more. Now you're at negative 68. You get to May, now you're adding more. Not that much more, though, right? Only 672, and now you have a negative bill. Well, now you get to June. June, their actual APS bill is $140. But you've got the $75, essentially credit, like a gift card that you can apply to that bill, and then your remaining bill is actually $65. Okay. Now after that, what happens, right? You've completely ran out of all the negative credits that you had. You ran out. You used up all of your gift cards essentially, and you don't have anything more to apply. And so your bill in July is $197 after you get that month's solar credits, but you still get those on a monthly basis. There's just no carryover. And so now your bill is $197. In August, your bill is $201. In September, your bill is $177, right? Like this is very normal. This is what a homeowner should expect on a 100% offset, offset system. And so the average bill is $63.66, right? That's what their average bill is going to show. That's what we show to our customers on one of our proposals, okay? If I change some of this, guys, you guys will actually see on how that changes. So let's say somebody has instead of a 10 kilowatt, let's say it's a 7 kilowatt. And let's say that 7 kilowatt produces, 12,500, just 12,000 kilowatt hours, right? And then let's say that production is 12,000 kilowatt hours, and that one's the same. If I go back to the results, you guys will see how this actually changed. It's changing in real time. The numbers right there, and they're all updating. And now you'll see for this particular customer, it's a 7 kilowatt system. They're using, they're using 12,000. The system produces 12,000. And so now they've got an average bill of $48.41 or a yearly bill of $580. And that's on a 7 kilowatt system, right? If I go bigger, let's say I do a 14 kilowatt, that, just throw a number out there, let's say 23,000 kilowatt hour production and usage. You guys will see this change on this end. And so for this particular customer, they've got an average bill at a 1-to-1 ratio, 100% system. They've got an average bill of $76 a month or $914 a year. Now we talked a little bit about earlier, it does make a difference if you oversize systems. And I know a lot of people are doing that, which is definitely helps that case, right? So let's say I take this, let's go back to like an average 10 kilowatt system, 18,500 kilowatt hours production and usage. We'll let that calculate real quick, right? And so $64 here, right? So now let's say we do 120% offset system, right? Or 120% ratio. So if you got 18,500 times 1.2, that means our production is 22,200, okay? And we'll let that do its thing. You see this change to 120%, and you'll see what happens here. So that's $64. Now they've got a lot more negative bills, right? Their first real, bigger bill doesn't come till August. Oops, sorry about that. Doesn't come till August, and overall their bills are lower for the year. And now instead of an average $64 bill, they've got an average $30 bill. And so there's definitely a relationship on, depending on the system size, what that's going to look like, right? So let me take you guys back to the PowerPoint real quick. So I know some of you guys are asking, is this tool available? Like I said, this is actually an internal tool that we use. We have a lot of resources into it. It is really kind of our intellectual property internally, so it's not something that we do share, aside from just kind of getting an understanding of how it works and how we come up with our numbers. But what we do have is a remaining bill worksheet. That's a simplified version of that will get you in the ballpark. And this is something that we've actually shared before, and we can share it to anybody that wants this. You guys can, let me know either in the chat, or if you want to, write me an email or on social media. So we have a worksheet that you can actually use in the home with the homeowner, and you can actually show them why it works this way. And so it's pretty self-explanatory. It looks a little bit complex, but essentially the first thing you do is you put in the system size and the production and the system, quote unquote offset, right? Then you just start filling it out, right? So it asks you, what's the system production? You put that in. You do that times 60%, because again, that's about what we see as the export rate. And what we're doing first is we're figuring out how much is APS going to pay the homeowner, like how much are they going to give them in credits per year. So that's what we're doing here. So you do your kilowatt hours, total production times 60% times the export rate. And so APS is basically going to give this homeowner about $1,159 a year in credits, okay? So then the next thing we got to figure out is how much are they going to charge the homeowner. So you put in, again, you put in your system production, or your system production times 40%, because that's how much you're actually getting from the solar system, which means you're not buying from APS. Then you put in your yearly home usage, and again, it's the same number, it's 18.5, minus B. So you're going to do it minus, where am I annotate here? And so you're going to do it minus B, which was this number, right? So it's 18,500 minus 7,400 equals 11,100, and you're going to multiply that times 16.5 cents, and you get $1,831. So that's what they're going to charge them for the electricity used. They're also going to charge them the grid fee. So on a 10 kilowatt system times 93 cents times 12 months is $111.60. Okay. Combine all that together. So you have C plus D, which is the power usage charge plus the grid charge is right here. Minus A, which is how much are they going to credit you back? Okay. Minus 1159.95 gives you a total of 783, which is their yearly APS charge, divided by 12 is $65. Okay, so this is something that you guys can use to actually figure out a remaining bill in APS territory, and you can even do it with your homeowner. Say, hey, look, let me explain to you why this process works this way. Because again, if you're telling homeowners about percentage of offset, like they're going to get super confused because why doesn't 100% equal no APS bill? And this breaks it down on why that is, right? And we're getting down to pretty close to the end. I might run a little bit over, guys. So, hang in there if you'd like. You're definitely welcome to. So let's talk a little bit about why there's some miscalculations in the marketplace. Like why doesn't everybody sort of know this? And whether you're using, Sighting, whether you're using SolarGraph, whether you're using Energy Toolbase, whether you're using Solar, whatever all these other companies out there, right? They don't all show the same numbers. And so the reason for that is, we've seen a few different things. They're either not accounting for all the costs, right? They're miscalculating the taxes, or they're using net metering logic, right? And so here's an example, and this is what happened with Energy Toolbase. Like I said, they've actually been really great at being responsive and saying, hey, let's take a look at this. Let's dive in. We've had multiple conversations. Our engineers have talked to their engineers about trying to nail it down, like why do we have different numbers? And here's the reason that we actually literally were able to pinpoint this. So let's say you have the same customer that has a $200 a month APS charge after solar, right? One of the summer months. So Energy Toolbase was not taking into account the grid fee. So on a 10 kilowatt system, we have a $9.30 a month fee. They had zero. So pre-tax, they were at $200, we're at $209. Now here's the second thing that they weren't accounting for. They were not doing the tax based on this number, while APS does. APS actually taxes this number here, and then they give you the solar credits, right? So you basically have this plus the grid fee, 209, add the tax is 229, and then they apply $150, and then your bill is $79.93. The way Energy Toolbase was doing it was no grid fee, no tax to this point, so you still had $200. They were subtracting out the $150, getting 30, then they were taxing the 30, and you were at $33, right? So you see that's a pretty big, that's almost a $50 difference between what APS actually charges and what they had in their tool. And a lot of the companies out there are doing the exact same thing. That's why when you run one of these proposals from these different companies, it ends up being a lesser amount than reality because they're not calculating it correctly. Like nobody's really taking the time to really dissect and look at post solar bills and stuff like that. So that's why you've got that discrepancy. Here's another example where in their scenario actually showed a $0 bill versus we show a $20 bill. Well, now APS shows a $20 bill, right? Because the same thing, if you're not doing the grid charge and they charge you $100 and you got $100 in solar credits, well, there's nothing to tax, right? 0 times 10% tax is still 0. And so, they end up with 0, we end up with $20. Now, one of the funny things about that is a lot of times people think like that's a scam, like how can they do that? The thing you have to understand is the solar credits, think of it as exactly like a gift card, right? If you go to a store and you buy, let's say you buy a pair of shoes for $100, right? they're going to tax that $100, right? What they're going to do is that, you know, they scan it at the register. It's you know, your purchase is $110 because of the tax. If I have a gift card, you know, if I got a gift card of $100 for my birthday and I go to the store and I give them a $100 gift card, they're going to apply it to my $100 charge, and I still have to pay $10, right? It doesn't, they don't apply a gift card pre-tax. They apply a gift card post-tax, and APS is doing the exact same thing, right? So they're taxing and all that, and then they're giving you the credits, which is why you end up with a completely different number, okay? And then the last thing of it is using net metering logic. Another thing that we've seen on there is a lot of the proposal tools out there, unfortunately, they're still using net metering logic. They default, which, you know, it blows my mind, but they default to like a net metering plan. You know, you'll put in the stuff and the post-solar rate plan will still be, let's say, standard rate with APS, which hasn't been around in 3 years, right? But they'll still default to that. Instead of defaulting to like Saver Choice, which is the plan they should be on, it defaults to net metering. And if, you know, if a rep doesn't have the information, or they're not savvy enough, maybe computer savvy enough, maybe they just jumped in from a different industry and this isn't really their background, they're not going to really have the foresight or even the knowledge to go, oh, hey, you know what, I need to go into the settings, because literally some of these, you have to go into the settings of the program and to actually change it. So you got to go dig around, make sure that the utility rate is correct so that your remaining bill is right. Otherwise, you're going to show a $20 bill, which is a lot what you see on these proposals, you know, $18, $12, $20. They're still considering that there's net metering, and that hasn't happened in, you know, in 3 years. And so those are, you know, those are the things that we're seeing that are affecting sort of the differences between what reality is and what a lot of people are hearing out there, okay? Let me jump real quick. We're a little over, but I'm almost done. So here's an example of an actual customer, okay? You guys can see their actual billing days here. This is all of last year. This was actually at the old 11.6 buyback. And this is an 11 kilowatt system. You guys can see their bill month to month. So this is a real customer. This isn't something that we modeled out. You know, they had a small little January bill, negative, right? They ran, you know, they ran out of that negative in August. They got a $125 bill. They got a $195 bill in September, and then it went back down, and then the $17 is going to carry over to the following year. And so this was a quote unquote 115% offset system. Their average bill was $30 a month because it was a 115, right? So it was oversized. Now, because APS currently pays you less than they used to pay you, you actually now need 120% to get you to the same $30. Every time that buyback rate drops, you need a bigger system to get you to the same result you were before. And that's what I was saying before, guys. If you're in the net metering market, like, hold on to that, right? Do not let go of that, because you're going to regret it. Because literally, this homeowner now needs to spend, you know, 5% more than they did back then if they were going solar now to get the same $30. You know, if you were going back 3 years ago, you know, you wouldn't need an 11 kilowatt system to produce 115. You would maybe need a 10 kilowatt system, which would obviously cost them less, and then you would actually end up with a $20 bill every single month with net metering. So literally, solar is getting more expensive. Every time these things change, all that means is that the homeowner has to pay more money, or, you know, the industry has to adjust and charge less, which obviously affects, you know, everybody's margins and everything on that. And so if you're net metering, you know, take advantage of that, because this is basically the future that we've seen. You know, again, California is doing an example of this where they're not, you know, they're not 100% metering in the same way that they used to be, right? Where they just kind of blend everything in one bucket, right? So that is changing. Here's the last thing I have before we get to do the end. Here's a couple guidelines for you guys. So if you're out there and you just kind of want a guideline, this is system size to between 7 to 14 kilowatts, okay? And this is the quote unquote percentage of offset. And so if you're offering somebody a system that's only 80%, they can expect an average bill on a 7 kilowatt of $75 a month, up to $130 on a 14 kilowatt average. Here's their yearly cost, right? At 100%, they can be about between 50 to 80 average, which is 600 to 960 a year. 120, you get in that 25 to 35 range. 140%, you're basically eliminating on a net basis their entire bill, okay? One thing to keep in mind is even here on this, they're still gonna get a bill even here. Even when it's zero, it's a net zero. So they still might get a, you know, $40 bill in August. But what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a bunch of credits on the back end, and they're going to get a check back from APS for like $40, which is going to cancel out that, and they end up with a net zero bill. One of the things to keep in mind is as they keep dropping that buyback, these numbers are going to have to keep changing. If you want somebody to have a $10 to $15 bill at 130, well, starting in the fall, you're going to have to do 135 to get them there, right? Starting next year, you're going to have to do 140 to get the same result that you were here. So every time that buyback changes, that's going to cost the homeowner more. So that's something that they have to understand, and we have to understand as an industry of what that means. All right. So that is what I have for today. Guys, definitely appreciate, appreciate everybody on the call. Appreciate you kind of taking the time and wanting to learn this stuff, because again, I think it's going to just improve the homeowner experience. It's going to improve the industry overall. It's going to improve really your sales by being knowledgeable and getting that information across to the homeowner, making sure that they understand what they're getting into, making sure that they don't feel that they got scammed or that they got lied to later. So that's all we have for today. Appreciate it, and we will see everybody tomorrow. Thanks so much.